every ship, my wife and I, entire design team, we select everything on the ship. So from the artwork to the plate, where my wife personally designs the plates and works with a ceramic company in Bali, an Italian couple called Gaia Ceramics that does hand-painted plates. Every single plate on our ships is hand-painted.
Welcome to Luxury Travel Innovators. I'm your host, Adam Deflorian. Joining me today is Francesco Galli Zugaro, owner of Aqua Expeditions. Francesco, thank you so much for joining me on Luxury Travel Innovators. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me, and great to be here with you today.
Of course. I heard it was your birthday.
It was 2 days ago. Yes, I've been had the pleasure of having my birthday in Vegas for the last 20 years.
Did you do anything fun?
I did. For the first time, I brought my wife and 3 children here. They'd never been to Vegas, and they came for the weekend, and we managed to score tickets at the Sphere for Backstreet Boys.
Fantastic.
So that was definitely, I did myself an injustice because I made them fall in love with Vegas, which I wasn't sure I wanted, but they liked it. They did that. We did Cirque du Soleil, so we took in all the highlights.
It's more fun than just meetings. Sounds great.
Yeah, and actually they could see, and as they're involved in the business, it's nice to have them see what I've been up to for the last 20 years here in Vegas.
That's great. Well, happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about Aqua Expeditions and history of the brand?
Gladly. So 18 years ago, I had this kind of clairvoyant view of what I wanted to do for the next foreseeable future. I had the opportunity to kind of cut my teeth into expedition cruising in the Galapagos Islands. And whilst I won't go too far back into my upbringing, but I just had the fortitude of having that sense of calling. And once I exited a business that I was running but wasn't a shareholder of, I decided to venture into small ship expedition cruising. I spent my time scouting South America, and I decided to settle down in Iquitos, in Lima, Peru, but running the business out of Iquitos. And today, 18 years later, true to point, I've delivered 6 expedition ships in that kind of high-end experiential space, and living in Singapore now, and built a brand of small ships, maximum 40 guests, that take guests to biodiversity hotspots around the world.
And you just announced a new ship, right? Aqualaris?
Correct.
Okay.
Aqualaris, we announced literally last few days here in Vegas.
Okay.
It's obviously the fact that I brought it to market and mentioned it today and the last few days means that it's been 3 years in the making, because I scout the destinations, I build the itineraries, I seek financing for the ships, I either build or buy and retrofit ships. So yeah, East Africa is our latest baby. Excited to bring her and put her in the water in February for an inaugural voyage out of Madagascar.
Okay.
And then kind of experiencing Africa, but on the water.
What have you, just kind of curious, like as you've grown the brand, grown the business, what's changed with the ships, like with this latest vessel? What's different?
Yeah, there's obviously, because we're so high touch and we're so close to our guests and our travelers, obviously we're always staying ahead of game, or at least trying to make sure that we're listening and staying engaged with our audience and our other guests. I think what's changed, obviously, is we started off as a river cruise company in that high-end experiential space, and not to be associated necessarily with mainstream river cruising, because not necessarily the same demographic of guests. I'm appealing to an affluent explorer. I'm appealing to that sense of exploration, that sense of adventure that guests have, that have been everywhere and looking for something new. And so as we started off venturing into small ships in iconic rivers of the world, the Amazon in Peru and the Mekong in Cambodia and Vietnam, more recently, the last 6 years, I ventured into coastal cruising. And that's kind of the big change. I wanted Aqua to be recognized as a global leader of small ship expedition, independent if we're inland waterways or coastal expeditions. And so the big changes come in that mindset. And within that, then we innovate in the actual specific ships when we get into it.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Can you give our listeners a little bit more on your background, your personal background, and what got you started in the travel business? What made you,
I mean, the short end of the story is that, I grew up in 16 countries.
Okay.
My dad was GM for Alitalia in Central and South America. My stepdad, who I grew up with, my mom and my stepdad, was bureau chief for Time Magazine. And we had the pleasure and the benefits of moving around every 2-3 years. I've lived in Germany, Cyprus, Israel, Switzerland, London, Rome. And then I went to school in the States. I went to undergraduate school at Boston College. I met my girlfriend then at the time, my wife now. We went to New York, we moved to London, and then spent a year backpacking, as a lot of these destinations are put on our horizon through backpackers, and we have a gratitude to give them. But beyond that, I then settled in Ecuador. And then I started working with a small ship expedition company, which was in private equity investing. We sold that, and then I exited, and I decided I want to do this myself. I've had this kind of sense of calling that I wanted to do my own business. I was working, running this business, falling in love with the travel space, and I settled in Peru. And then 12 years ago, I moved to Singapore to grow the business in Asia and settle and build our own river ship in the Mekong between Vietnam and Cambodia. And today, Singapore has been our home now for the last 13 years. My kids were grown up there. And then slowly, as my kids grew up in shipyards, watching us build and run and operate ships, they obviously have come into the business in the last few years. They went to hospitality school in Switzerland and then slowly worked their way into the business. So it's become a lifestyle of ours, but one that has been very gratifying. And we've now been able to cater to 40,000 travelers with us over the last 18 years, and very blessed for it.
It's amazing. So what, for those in our audience that want to understand the real differences between smaller ship, specialty expedition cruising, and like mid-size, large-scale ship cruising, what are the big differences that you would tell someone that's considering it but is a little worried because they don't think they're a cruise person per se?
Our typical guest is not a cruising clientele.
Yep.
Okay, so our typical guest is someone who's been everywhere, has done everything, but has a sense of adventure that we all have innate in our bodies, that we feel this desire to go out of our comfort zone and have these wow moments, right? Where we're snorkeling with whale sharks, or we're, walking along giant tortoises in the Galapagos, or we're biking through beautiful rice paddies in Cambodia. So we appeal to that sense of exploration, that sense of adventure, but we obviously make sure that we don't sacrifice any creature comforts that our travelers and our guests are wanting and expecting to have. Our guests are staying in all the top properties of the world, the Amans, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carltons, but they also travel to these exotic destinations. And when they do so, they want to do it in an authentic way. Yeah. And I think whilst the word cruising, sometimes people don't know where to put us. They don't know. I think I just put ourselves in that experiential travel space. But what we do is we keep it as authentic as possible. So contrary to larger ships, and there's large ships, there's medium-sized ships, there's small ships, and then there's Aqua. We're probably the smallest fleet of ships out there that's got a global presence. Okay. So within our space, maximum 40 guests and 20 suites. Our smallest ship is 16 guests. But what we've done is we've bridged this gap from private yachting experience to making that private yacht available by booking a cabin only. And all of a sudden, it makes this world of private yachting much more accessible to someone saying, I'm not going to drop, that check size for a private yacht, but I'm not going to be able to have that experience by only booking a cabin. But having that authentic, kind of high-end luxury experience on a ship that's been highly, highly curated. I mean, every ship, my wife and I, our entire design team, we select everything on the ship. Wow. From the artwork to the plate, where my wife personally designs the plates and works with a ceramic company in Bali, an Italian couple called Gaia Ceramics, that does hand-painted plates. Every single plate on our ships is hand-painted.
Wow.
So that attention to detail is something that you can't expect on a much larger ship. And I think people value and stay loyal to Aqua over the years because they have that sense of authenticity, and they feel just completely at ease as soon as they embark on one of our ships. And then couple that with local crew. The difference with having a big ship, and by, our mother company now, obviously, and one of my partners now has incredible larger ships, but they're restricted to a certain degree that they can't have 100% local staff.
Okay.
And I think that adds an element of authenticity when you've got Ecuadorian crew catering to you in Ecuador, Peruvian in Peru, Indonesian. You all of a sudden bring that experience right back to a local level, but always delivering at the world-class level.
How do you handle people? One of my guests this week, actually, I'm stealing their phrase, and not to call it training, I'm going to call it people development instead of people training. How do you develop people to get them to the service standards needed? How much work is that to do that for every local market with different cultures and teaching them? I'm assuming English as well, right? And
completely. Obviously, first of all, you have to recognize, and you know it very well, that we're catering to a very demanding clientele. Yes. Whilst they're not necessarily huge egos, they're obviously paying, and they want that value to be there, and it's got to be a very good value proposition for whatever price point we're at.
Yeah.
Once you expect that, then you've obviously got to hopefully deliver, and if anything, at least exceed their expectations. So obviously the benchmark is really high. But we do that, and you can do it at the highest levels with amazing, talented local crew. So the first thing I did is I certified my HR department when I started 18 years ago, and today it's the same team. I sent to Lincoln, Nebraska, to a company called Talent Plus, And I said, make sure that you are trained to identify the most amazing talent out there. And so I've got an HR team that's Talent Plus certified, which is like other kind of companies that go out and do, psychological profiling and testing on the type of talent you're attracting. And we've created the talent pool of our company, a talent map, and we've now retained, and we have high retention, low attrition to our talent pool. And so we hire passionate locals. Many times they're self-taught, self-educated because they're locals, but we can elevate that level of guest experience to the highest levels, to the point where we can win numerous accolades, consumer-driven. Travel and Leisure is #1 in the world for small ship expeditions or river ships, and that's all consumer accolades. So
Amazing.
It's a
Congratulations.
nice recognition.
Fantastic. You kind of touched on this, but I'm actually curious to hear your exact answer to it. Everybody seems to be getting into luxury sailing, right? You have OE, Orient Express, you have Aman, you have Ritz with their most recent, yacht that they had. Seemed like everybody under the sun of note on that first journey or that first voyage.
Yep.
Why are they all entering the market, and what do you think about it?
I think, first of all, you're right, and I welcome, obviously, in whatever space and whatever capacity, that additional kind of exposure to the space. I think as long as I've stayed focused to our vision and I haven't been distracted, I've been, laser focused to what I wanted to execute, and that's why it's consistently every 3 years I can bring a ship to market. I haven't been distracted from that. However, you also have to understand that the loosely used terms like luxury expeditions are commonly spread through a segment that's quite broad, as far as our ships that are 20 to 40 passengers up to 500-600 passengers. We become destination specialists. So I think the minute that you have a ship that's permanently in location, that is building relationships with local communities, that is hiring locally and maintaining that crew for consistent year in, year out to develop that guest experience, I think all of a sudden you put us in a different segment, a different bag, when you've got these global itineraries that are roaming the world and not really calling home to a specific port every week.
Okay.
I think it's a different type of experience. So we are the destination specialists delivering some really authentic stuff in the Galapagos, on the Mekong, in the Amazon, in Raja Ampat, which is West Papua, which is kind of the holy grail of expeditions. It's Galapagos on steroids. Yeah. It's really incredible to go look for birds of paradise, then swim in a tropical blue rainforest river, and then go seek whale sharks and giant oceanic mantas. But to be able to do that takes time, to build relationships with the locals, to understand the local park rangers, to create a culinary experience that's on par with the destination, yet not too kind of hardcore. So I think that's the difference. And doing this in these spaces, these destinations that are such fragile ecosystems, are constantly under pressure and under threat. And we need to obviously have that advantage that we have a small ship that's by no means seen as a threat to these destinations, because our group size are 4 couples to a guide, 4 couples to a private speedboat. So when you do that coupled with larger ships, but these larger brands that you mentioned are going to hit it out of the park. They're going to do amazingly well. But I recognize them more as floating palaces rather than true expedition ships.
Got it. What do you think the reason is they've all gotten into it now? Like, why is it every single luxury brand that you can think of has decided 2025 through 2028, we are going to launch this?
Because they need to stay relevant.
Okay.
They need to have an engaging opportunity and a sense of kind of exploration, a sense of adventure that we all have. I keep going back to this because whilst our guests are also staying in the beautiful hotels in Italy and going on African safaris, you've got to, if you want to create a go-to brand that's controlling that ecosystem of all the travel experiences that our affluent explorers wanting to have, you need to be able to give them that variety. And so they've recognized that there's an opportunity where they can create incredible value and also extend the length of stay.
Okay.
Our minimum trip for us is 3 nights on our river ships. A typical hotel in any city destination could easily have just 1 night bookings. So the minute you go to a ship, you've obviously increased your minimum revenue to 3-4 nights.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the experience is all encompassing. You're including many times meals and excursions. So all of a sudden, that nightly rate, you can justify a much higher rate because your revenue generating package is a much broader kind of all-encompassing product. And so that's one. And obviously the fact that they can keep this kind of guest that wants to have these checklists, really, I don't know what you call them, but the guests that want to have all these destinations checked off their list and be able to check,
Yeah.
6 ports in a week.
Got it.
And so there's a multiple kind of factor that draws on the crowds to these destinations.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. And you think it's you mentioned sustainability, right? And so, what are you guys doing since you're such a sustainable organization and the areas you're going are so precious? What are you guys doing from the sustainability front?
So going back to the fact that obviously we operate in these biodiversity hotspots and these destinations that are constantly under pressure from global warming, coral bleaching, and obviously over tourism in general. We choose destinations specifically because they're remote, they're difficult to access, they're highly restricted. Some of them are license restricted, like the Galapagos. You can't just take a ship and just go to the Galapagos. They're restricted. There's been no new licenses in the Galapagos since 1999.
Wow.
And so it all of a sudden creates this kind of buffer zone to make sure you protect that ecosystem. But at the end of the day, we partner with local organizations on the ground. So in the Galapagos, we partner with the Charles Darwin Foundation that's got a shark ecology and a mangrove protection project. We partner there with them. In Indonesia, we partner with the Manta Trust. So we support local initiatives that have an understanding of the threats, the solutions, and we bring that attention to those institutions rather than trying to create our own organization or our own NGO that maybe have a total disconnect with the real need. And we do this on the Mekong. We do this in the Amazon. We've worked with 30 illegal fishermen that were poaching this beautiful 130 kilo, the biggest freshwater fish in the world is called the Arapaima gigante, which is, it's called the paiche. And they used to be these illegal fishermen, obviously poaching these fish in the black water lagoons of the Amazon. We worked with our chef and the local institutions to turn these 30 illegal fishermen now into park wardens, protecting them and being advocates of protecting this lagoon that used to have 800 species and dwindling, and now there's 15,000 of them.
Wow.
The population has grown, and now they're actually able to get quotas to fish them. 15% a year of quotas to bring them to the restaurants in Lima. And so that kind of sustainable practice is best used on the ground with local know-how.
That's amazing. It's amazing. What makes your parent company, Ponant, a good fit and steward of the Aqua Expeditions brand? What
So
kind of brought that together?
my type of business obviously is capital intensive. Over the years as we've grown it, I've got to go back to market, raise capital, find financing, and not necessarily do our destinations shout out, confidence as far as international financing opportunities, because you've got Indonesia, you've got Peru, you've got Amazon, you've got Cambodia. But so it's been a challenge every year to bring, financing. And we did this through private equity, very successful. And that's some incredible partnerships with some US-based private equity groups that have entered and exited very successfully. But also, in order to have that roadmap and that capital access for the future, I made a call last year to go to a formal process to find that new home for Aqua. Okay. And I wanted to go switch out of just having access to capital to bring a strategic partner. And that can be seen in many forms. It could be strategic commercially, obviously. It could be strategic operationally, technically, digitally, whichever capacity we could find. And we went to a process, and yes, we settled with Ponant because I just thought it was a natural fit. There are entrepreneurial investors at heart at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. The brands, the portfolio outside of Ponant are incredible lifestyle brands that I felt resonated with my heritage also as an Italian. Some of the brands in the collection are obviously world-class, very well-known brands. And Ponant just aligned with me as far as my vision, but also protecting what we've built as a brand and recognize the value we've put in, but seeing how overall we'll be able to continue developing our destinations and our products, but staying true to our vision and ethos. And it's been 8 months already. Okay. I'm super happy because it's done. Integrating two companies, there's no rule book. You kind of, and we took a decision to kind of naturally let it organically come together, and having some metrics in place and some guidance in place, but not forcing it. And I think naturally just gravitated to the most common kind of synergies and common denominators. And we're seeing the results, and we're seeing it's been, I think, very, very well received, and I'm super happy.
That's amazing. And you'll keep the brand separate, though, right? So.
Correct. Yes. Right now, I think, like I said, they've seen the value we've created in Aqua. They see that it's a different market, it's a different audience. There's obviously some crossover that we can, and we'll see those opportunities both commercially and financially over time. Mm-hmm. But I think the markets recognize that there's two incredible brands. They speak well to each other, and both our teams are super excited, and we're just excited about what's to come.
That's great. Fantastic. What is in the pipeline that you can talk about that's interesting with this sort of new, acquisition by Ponant and stability, et cetera? What else besides the new ship Aqualares that we discussed can you talk about?
So I have to be true to the fact that our bandwidth is what it is. Between our team, I've got obviously an incredible team of 400 strong today, but
Okay.
the majority obviously is crew on the ships. Our capacity to deliver ships is not like some of the bigger brands out there that can drop a ship a month.
Yeah.
But I've also stayed true to that because I didn't want every ship to be a cookie cutter replica of the past one and just changing some of the wallpaper and some of the cushions. I wanted to have a ship that's destined for that destination and has its own sense and its own identity. So our capacity to deliver more ships is restricted by our own capacity, which is basically one every 3 years. Outside of that, there's a lot of innovation that we can do. There's a lot of innovation on the technology used on the ships, on the river ships. Obviously, it's a much simpler technology, but on the ocean going, we can go a lot more sustainable. We can go a lot more technologically advanced. A larger technology is more available for the larger ships. For the small ships, it's hard to kind of be I don't want to be the guinea pig for any technology, but I also have to be realistic on what is within our capacity in remote destinations. So there is a lot of stuff I've already got a very clear roadmap of the next 10 years looks like, and I've sort of kept everybody at bay every 3 years to deliver some newsworthy items. We've got some great news coming September 15th, so stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Because I've got obviously a new destination we're announcing,
Okay.
and I'm super excited about that. I think people are going to be blown away hopefully they're already blown away by East Africa, but I think you're going to see that it's just going to make even more sense when we bring this new destination to market.
It's amazing. I'm curious to understand the ultimate goal for Aqua. I mean, we've talked about growth, adding ships every few years. We've talked about the approach to new destinations, new itineraries, this whole thing. But you started the company. What is the sort of what would you define success as? Like where is as an entrepreneur myself, right? I always like to talk to others who have a vision and have created something from nothing to what it is today. I'd love to understand kind of what's that ultimate vision. When would you say, wow, that's sort of I've achieved what I had set out to do?
I think this week here in Vegas is kind of an affirmation of a lot of that because just walking the hallways and just seeing that I've got travel advisors, partners that I've built relationships over the last 18 years where they can come back to me and they constantly stop me and say, Francesco, oh my God, I can't believe the announcements I've seen. And I remember when you came with an idea to Vegas and you had a rendering of a ship on the Amazon that you were planning on launching next spring, and now look how far you've come. And by no feat has it been an easy job. I mean, through a lot of the trials and tribulations I've endured over the years, it's definitely tested the business model and the business case. But I think that I'd say that I'm very grateful for where we are today, and it's come through a lot of hard work, and by no means a solo. Yes, it was my why when I started, but now it's a common why to an incredible group of talented individuals. So I'd say that today, phase one or Aqua, 2.0 is exactly where I want it to be, which will, at the end of next year, it'll be 20 years of Aqua. And what the future holds, maybe it's in my next gen, and my kids and my partners. I still think I've got a lot of fight left in me, and I think there's incredible place of the world that people don't know about. Case in point, Aldabra, just to make a reference to this new destination. Aldabra is an island that maybe you haven't heard of. Most people haven't even heard of. Aldabra is the Galapagos of East Africa. Okay. Galapagos is known for 15, 20,000 giant tortoises roaming these islands in South America. But nobody knows that there's an island in East Africa called Aldabra, which is one island that has 150,000 giant tortoises on one atoll with no humans and 6 rangers, and we're taking guests there as of next year. So there's a lot of incredible places that I spend time traveling to, and then figuring out how to demystify it and bring them to market while keeping those destinations safe.
That's amazing. That's incredible. What luxury brands, given that it's all about sort of innovation and luxury, outside of cruise, outside of hospitality, do you really admire? What luxury brands do you think do it really well? I could think of a few offhand just based on the fact that every plate is hand painted and designed by your wife. Who do you think has authentic luxury that you really respect and has I'm going to call it value, not from a monetary perspective, but more just it's worth it. It really is worth it. Who does a really exceptional job.
There's incredible companies out there doing it. A lot of them, I have a feeling, still have that DNA of the founders still in them. I think obviously there's a challenge that when you trade up and you start, growing at a speed that may seem financially viable, but you lose that authenticity or that true original sense of calling. But there's brands out there. I think Singita does an incredible job. Singita, obviously, some of the world's top luxury safari outfitters, owner-operators in Africa. We were recently, I've traveled them on numerous occasions. We just tried their new lodge in Rwanda, which blew our mind. I took our kids. I'd been there twice already. But still, continuously, I used to say when I grew up, I want, something like Singita on the water. And then there's more boutique properties like Pasalacqua and Lake Como. Obviously, Valentina and her family have done an exceptional job to the point where I knew it withstood the test when I walked in and my wife and I checked in for the weekend and tears came out of my wife's eyes, which I haven't seen before walking into a hotel room.
Yeah.
And that says it right there. So I think there's an incredible group of properties around the world, and many I can go on. In Asia, there's, companies even much larger. Rosewood's doing an incredible job on the service level and some of the design concepts that are really appealing. There's new companies coming to market. So I'm excited at what's to come and how people are innovating.
Yeah.
But I think what my true calling really is when I recognize that entrepreneurial spirit coming to light through smaller properties.
How about outside of travel? Who do you think could be craftsmen, could be goods, could be products? Who do you think's doing a good job in luxury?
I mean, obviously, I'm always going to go back to my heritage in Italy, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, on the menswear side, I can speak to a lot of brands in Italy that are just smaller brands that that are starting to tap into new markets. But I think on the menswear side, there's incredible brands out there. Barba from Naples, in the likes of Isaia and Kita and all of them that are sometimes obviously just coming to market, some smaller than other more established ones. But I'm always going to go back to my roots, as they used to say, as they still say, all roads lead to Rome.
Yeah.
And it's funny how after years of being abroad, I've started to spend a lot more time in Italy. And I just love being there and identifying cool small brands around northern Italy that are delivering incredible shoe wear, incredible shirts, incredible bespoke pieces, and still for good value without going over the top.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was just in Puglia, and seeing the craftsmanship and the leather goods and the artisans at work is just unbelievable, isn't it? The value in what they create, but everything's handmade, authentic, beautiful, and to your point, it's still good cost.
Yeah, and you don't have to go crazy and above and beyond, but you
Yeah.
can still get some great value. And so I think that's kind of a lot of what I enjoy these days now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How about going into technology? How do you guys leverage like guest profiles and technology for your high net worth guests that are Aqua customers?
So over the last few years, I've recognized and we started realizing that when I moved to Singapore, I was able to tap into some incredible talent in the region between Vietnam and Singapore, from the IT, from really the technology and the IT transformation that Aqua has undergone in the last 5-6 years, and I've invested heavily. That's probably the area that I've invested the most in the last few years. I've got a team of over 25 people in Singapore, which, if you can understand, is by no easy feat given the cost of Singapore.
Yeah.
But I felt that it was a wise investment into the future because, given our size, sometimes we're too small for the bigger ad tech agencies, for the tech firms, for the ad agencies. We're just too small for that kind of budget where we can find the quality in the small ones. So I had to take it all in-house. And so I decided to take in our CRM team and build out our capacity through obviously implement existing platforms, but integrating them all with our booking platforms, with our CRM, with our finance, with our forecasting software. And over the years now, we've developed a very strong IT transformation, CRM, and all creatives are done in-house, content is done in-house. And to be able to do that and then roll out these products and these new content, these new experiences, has allowed us to now ramp up and have over 45% of our business is direct.
Wow.
Which is important, and I still value our trade agency more than anything but having that balance of having that direct relationship with our guests and that trade travel advisor relationship really allows us to understand that entire ecosystem and understand our guests to be able to deliver to our guests. So it's important that I have that direct communication with our guests just as much as our travel advisor. And then in specifically, obviously, going into the innovation of obviously the hot topic of, AI and how we're
Yeah.
enabling that. I think, sky's the limit of what's going to happen. I don't think anybody has a crystal ball to what's going to happen in the next, 6, 12, forget about 24 or
Exactly.
more months. But I recognize the value in it, but I also recognize that all they're doing is they're enabling our capacity to continue having that high touch. So as long as I'm harnessing that and enabling that, I'm never going to automate a lot of aspects to replace our relationship with our guests and our travel advisors. But can we empower our teams? And we do that in multiple ways. First, operationally, I've done this with my tax and legal team to make sure that we can vet documentation, legal contracts through we partner with a company called Axiom, which does we adopted Copilot throughout the entire organization, and now our capacity to review legal and financial documents is a lot faster to make decisions. We've implemented a 24-hour IT tech support in-house for the company to reduce 50% of our IT inquiries of our staff to our IT requirements, so that shooting's gone away, or at least reduced by 50%. And so in that capacity, and then also from our proposal preparation, we have two types of teams on the ground. We have reservations that handles our travel executives and our travel agents, and then our expedition consultants that handle our direct inquiries. But preparing those proposals is a different audience, a different tone of voice, a different type of content. And Copilot's allowed us to perfect that proposal preparation before we send it out.
That's amazing. What do you do for advisors that you think they really appreciate?
Answer their emails within 4 hours.
I love it.
I think
With AI or in person?
No, in person. In person,
Yeah.
I still haven't perfected that auto reply, but and I unfortunately haven't turned on an auto reply in 18 years. I don't think I've ever turned it on.
Yeah.
But I think no, true to that. I think the fact that we've grown. And we haven't grown exponentially. I mean, it's not as if I credit ourselves to be by any means a household brand, but within our space, within our niche of that high-end true expedition ship company, I haven't lost that ability to make them feel that we're there for them and that there's no big egos in my business. I will take a call. I'll answer any question that any agents, they know they can WhatsApp me, they know they can email me. And I think not having lost that original recognition of who put me where I am today, which is our travel advisors and obviously our valued guests, recognizing and respecting that and being there for them, I think has gone a lot further than people value. And they appreciate that, because it's not as if I've grown to the point where I don't have time for them. I make time for them, and I'm happy to, because I genuinely have incredible relationships with them.
That's amazing. Where do most of your guests typically come from? Like, what's the guest?
About 60% of our business comes from in North America and Canada.
Okay, 60%.
Yeah.
And then the rest is small
comes
portion?
from UK, Australia, Mexico, Brazil, and mainland Europe.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Francesco. I really appreciate your time. I love to finish with a few rapid fire questions, which I'm excited to ask you because I think you'll have fantastic answers for them. So let's start with, what personal travel are you most excited for next?
Going back to my house in Italy. I've got, obviously, our residence is in Singapore, but we have a beautiful home in Italy, and I just like to go back and get on my bike and just roam northern Italy. So that's really, I mean, we in our space, we have the pleasure of going to incredible places, and we're grateful for it, the opportunity to travel the world where we go to. But sometimes going home is just as much as an adventure, and I value that as much as anything else.
I totally agree. All right, so outside of home, what else?
I like to take my kids to Mexico. I
Yeah.
think I spend a lot of time, a lot of my upbringing on holidays with my dad in Mexico, and it's an incredible country, and I'd like to take them there. So I think that's definitely on and a little bit more South America, even though they grew up and were born in Ecuador and grew up in Peru. Beyond that, to take them to Argentina and Patagonia, and Chilean and Argentinian Patagonia would be definitely on my bucket list for them, because it's just the scenery is just spectacular, and obviously Buenos Aires delivers just as good Italian food as in Rome. So
Fantastic.
I'm looking forward to that.
Love it. The show is all about innovation and moving forward, but for a moment, I like to step back into the past. And what do you miss about the glamorous days of travel? Like, what do you wish still existed?
The time to read a book. How many times have I traveled with a book in my carry-on that I end up just taking right back to my house and not having opened it? And I think whilst I'm not gonna be, giving any surprises here, but I think that the fact that we just lead such a high-paced life, and just to take that moment to just sit back and read a book, even if it's a chapter of a book or even if it's 10 pages, I think I'd like to be able to find that space. And to do so, I'm extremely well balanced in finding that personal and professional time, and I think I do it very well. We can confirm it maybe with a comment from my wife in the future, but I do genuinely believe that. But I also have the luxury of traveling with them, so it allows me to have them with me a lot of the time as a family. But to have that time to just take it slight, just drop it down a notch in the intensity would be nice, and I think that's what I would enjoy a little bit more.
That's great. And last, moving forward, what innovation in travel doesn't exist today that you think is missing? And it doesn't have to be technology. It could be a thing, a place, a function, a tool.
I'd like to think that someone could just take that painstaking task of just lugging luggage around. I think there's a way to just remove that process. We love to travel. We love to, the process of getting to a destination is half the experience, I think, or at least a large part of it. But if we could just remove that luggage, there's no pleasure in lugging luggage around. And by any means, my packing capacity hasn't gotten better as I've gotten older. Unfortunately, it's gotten a lot worse. So if there's a way to simplify it, to make it a slightly more enjoyable, I think it would innovate, or it would put a smile on a lot of people's faces.
At least the packing and the schlepping both.
Yeah, I think it's the schlepping that really. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are trying to innovate and send your luggage
Shipping.
ahead and all
Yeah.
that, but it's still not there yet. I think it should be maybe it should be part of the airline booking process. Maybe it should be embedded with your flight ticket, but something that kind of just elevates that luggage process to your final destination or back home to another level. I think that would be a blessing.
Well, and I think the shipping, my wife always talks about the shipping level of luggage to make it easier because I'm always with my young children carrying 1,000 bags. The problem is if you're doing multiple places, you can't do it because you can ship it to one place and they can ship it back home, but you can't ship it and then ship it and then ship it and ship it. It won't make it.
Yeah.
So
No,
we need to
so-
figure something else.
I'll leave that challenge to somebody, but if
Somebody
someone
needs
can
to
hack
do it.
then I'm all for it.
We can both invest in it.
Happy.
Thanks, Francesco.
And my back would be happy for you.
It sure would be. And maybe the surgeons wouldn't like us so much because it's taking out of their pocket.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Thanks for watching this episode of Luxury Travel Innovators. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. See you next time.